Right, good evening everyone. I'm Alex White from the British Nutrition Foundation and I'm an assistant nutrition scientist. It's great to have so many of you joining us tonight for our BNF Healthy Eating Week webinar on sleep well. Just a few things to go through before we start. Just to note that this webinar will be recorded and it will go online subsequently to this. So if there's for any reason you might have to leave or you only catch half the webinar, then don't worry, it'll be going online. It'll be sent out to registrants of Healthy Eating Week. If you've got any questions, some of you might already have seen the chat box in the far right-hand side. If you've got any questions throughout the webinar, unfortunately, I won't be able to answer them as I go through, but I do have my colleague Claire here with me tonight, who'll answer any of the questions that you may have. And if there's any sort of specific questions on sleep that might need a little bit more of an answer, then we can put these up online when the webinar recording goes online. So it'd be great to have as many of you interacting with the webinar as possible and asking your questions in that chat box. So just a few notes about Healthy Eating Week before we start. So we've been running Healthy Eating Week as BNF since 2013. So this is our 7th year. And for those of you who haven't seen the week before, haven't participated in the week before, how it works is we run 5 challenges, 1 on each of the days, and then we have specific resources for schools and workplaces, and we have a challenge and a super challenge on each of these days. So this year, our 5 challenges are have breakfast, have 5 a day, drink plenty, and get active, and they're the same as last year. And we've also got our brand new Sleep Well challenge this year. So this is the first time we've done this challenge, and that's what the webinar is going to be tonight, to try and give people a bit more background information on why we've chosen Sleep Well as one of our Healthy Eating Week challenges this year and what can be expected from the challenge. So what is the Sleep Well challenge? So the challenge is to get the sleep you need every night and get into a good bedtime routine. So we've got a super challenge, one for workplaces, which is keep a sleep diary for a week to see how much sleep you're getting. And then we've got our super challenge for schools and nurseries. If you really want to push your school and nursery into the challenge, based on the recommended amount of sleep for your age range, write a sleep plan to help you get the sleep you need every night for a week. So this is our 5th and final challenge of the week. It's brand new for Healthy Eating Week 2019. We really hope that everyone gets involved. If you are participating in the week and in this challenge, then please get involved on social media and show us what you're doing. So there's nothing better for us as the education team, but also for the science team who work on the workplace Healthy Eating Week resources, to see our resources being used and to see people engaging in the challenges. So that's fantastic for us to see. So what will we be covering tonight? We'll start by looking at the sleep-wake cycles, so looking at our body's daily rhythms and how a lack of sleep can have an impact on these. Then we'll talk about how sleep might affect our health and our body weight, so looking at why sleep is important and the health effects of a lack of sleep can have, both in the short term and in the long term. We'll also be looking at what are the sleep recommendations for children and for adults. And then we'll be looking at some top tips on how to get a good night's sleep and ensuring that your bedroom is sleep friendly. So sort of some top tips on how to get a good night's sleep. So first of all, our sleep-wake cycles. So these are to do with processes known as circadian rhythms. And these are physical, mental, and behavioral changes that follow a daily cycle. So one of the examples of this is our sleep-wake cycle. So the idea that we sleep at night and we're awake during the day. And this sleep-wake cycle is all to do with our sleep hormone called melatonin, which is released at nighttime in response to the dark and then is inhibited in the day when there is light. So this plays a key role in, first of all, helping you sleep, but also in synchronizing the release of your hormones. And this can also include our appetite hormones. And we'll look in a little bit more detail later on about how melatonin's effect on these appetite hormones can then further influence our sleep and how it affects body weight. Your sleep-wake cycles work best when you have regular sleep habits. So it's likely that you'll notice bigger swings of sleepiness and alertness if you haven't had enough sleep and if you're not sleeping regularly. And disruptions to the sleep-wake cycle can influence important bodily functions. So these disruptions could include things like jet lag, daylight savings time, or if you're staying up very late or having disrupted body sleep. So why is sleep important? So plainly and simply, sleep is a basic requirement for good health. So whilst an occasional night's sleep won't harm your health, it might just impact the following day, and you might be more likely to feel fatigued or lack focus in that day. In the short term or after several sleepless nights, a lack of sleep can have a negative impact on your dietary choices, your cognitive skills, and it might make you more vulnerable to colds and infections. If you've had several sleepless nights, it might also be more difficult to concentrate and make decisions, and it could also affect your mood. And there's probably quite a few people, myself included, who might notice this impact on their mood if they haven't been sleeping very well. In the longer term, a regular lack of sleep over a substantial period of time has been associated with an increased risk of some serious health conditions. So these include obesity, which has a link to sleep and body weight, which we'll look at in a second, heart disease, stroke, and hypertension in adults, and obesity in children and in young people. So sleep is extremely important for many factors of health, both in the short term and in the long term. So how about this association between sleep and our body weight? So one of the influences of sleep on health is through this association, and that a lack of sleep can be associated with an increased body weight. So not getting enough sleep has been linked to a higher intake of energy, eating more snacks and snacking on less healthy foods. One of the reasons for this is that people who sleep less might have extra opportunities in their day to consume more calories, simply because they're awake for a longer period of time. And an example of this might be that you're more likely to snack on unhealthy foods if you're staying up into late hours or into the early hours of the morning. And these sleep deprived people also tend to report a lower intake of fruit and vegetables. They tend to consume larger portions and have irregular meal patterns. And there's also more common in people who are sleep deprived to snack more frequently, and particularly on unhealthy or high energy dense foods, which can increase your risk of body weight. As we discussed earlier, being sleep deprived can also alter your levels of hormones involved in appetite. So it might be that because you're sleep deprived, you have an increase in your hunger hormones, and this will make you feel hungrier. The impact of tiredness and fatigue is also important. So this can be brought on by a number of factors, one of which is a lack of sleep, but there might also be other factors affecting it, such as a large amount of sedentary behavior, poor posture, or constant worrying or stress can increase your tiredness or your fatigue. And when you're tired and fatigued, it might reduce your desire to cook healthy food, increase sedentary behavior, and reduce physical activity. So an example of this would be if you haven't had much sleep and then you've gone to work, you're feeling really tired, you might be less likely to want to cook a lovely meal, and you might be more likely to go and purchase a takeaway or a ready meal and sit in front of the TV rather than going to the gym or going for a run or something like that. So all of these factors together might increase the chance of weight gain, and weight gain can lead to obesity. Something that's quite interesting when looking at this association is that it might also work the other way. And this is because obesity is a risk factor for some diseases, such as sleep apnea and arthritis, which may limit an individual's ability to sleep. So sleep apnea is a disorder in which breathing is briefly and repeatedly interrupted during sleep. So this can regularly interrupt your sleep and lead to poorer sleep quality. And also arthritis might also limit your ability to sleep. So whilst there's an association between lack of sleep and an increase in body weight, this can then lead into a vicious cycle where the fact that you're gaining weight and becoming more obese is a risk factor for then certain diseases that will further limit your ability to sleep or reduce your sleep quality. So we've looked at why a lack of sleep might negatively impact your health, but how much sleep do we need a night? So these are sort of the top level recommendations in babies, but I'll go into a bit more detail here. And these are from the recommendations from the Mill Pond Children's Sleep Clinic, which is used by the NHS. So breaking this down a little bit, a baby of 1 week old would need 8 hours of sleep in the daytime and around 8.5 hours at night time. At 4 weeks, 6 to 7 hours in the daytime and 8 to 9 hours at night time. At 3 months, 4 to 5 hours in the daytime and 10 to 11 hours at night time. At 6 months, 3 hours in the daytime and 11 hours at night time. And then we've got here 9 to 12 months, 2.5 hours in the daytime and 11 hours at night. And then up to 2 years, 1 hour 30 sleep in the daytime and around 11.5 hours at night time. And then as babies start to get a bit older, around 3 years, around 0 to 45 minutes in the daytime and 11 hours to 12 hours at night time. And when these children get into around 4 years old, the recommendations are just to sleep in the night time. So for a child of 4 years, the recommendations are 11 hours and 30 minutes at night time. So going on a bit older now, the recommendation for children for 5 to 11-year-olds, 9.5 to 11 hours at night, and for 11 to 16-year-olds, 9 to 9.5 hours at night. And in the next slide, we'll look into a bit more detail about sleep in teenagers, the factors that can impact sleep in teenagers, and what the recommendations are. So when we look at adult recommendations later on, you'll notice that the recommendations for sleep in children and in babies are significantly higher than in adults. This is because babies, children, and also teenagers, although to a slightly lesser extent, need significantly more sleep than adults to support their rapid mental and physical development. So how about this group of teenagers that can be prone to a lack of sleep due to their lifestyle and also their unique sleep-wake cycles? This is something I found really interesting when looking at sleep in teenagers. So we've discussed this idea of our circadian rhythms or body clocks earlier on, and these are to do with the sleep-wake cycles and also the melatonin, the sleep hormone release. But it's thought that the teenagers' body clocks are set slightly later than in adults, which means that teenagers have a natural tendency to stay up later at night and wake up later in the morning. So their sleep patterns and their body clocks are set slightly later than in adults. However, this can be problematic in teenagers because whilst teenagers might go to sleep later, they've still got to wake up relatively early for school. So if teenagers are sleeping late and waking up early for school, this can mean they're not getting enough sleep. An example here would be, in order to get these 9 to 9.5 hours per night, which are recommended in 11 to 16-year-olds, if a teenager's waking up at 7 in the morning for school, they'll have to go to bed at between 9:30 and 10 p.m. And there'll be some secondary teachers listening here that perhaps would not think that the students in their class would be going to bed at between 9:30 and 10 p.m, perhaps especially in the 15 to 16-year-olds. This can be further made worse because of their lifestyle. So either late nights and long lines at the weekend can disrupt the sleep patterns further, but also things like staying up late to watch TV or playing computer games or using social media late at night or even during the night if someone wakes up. These can disrupt sleep further, and it can make it even harder for teenagers to wake up for school because they're getting less sleep, and the shift in sleep patterns at the weekends are then disrupting their body clock and disrupting the frequency of their sleep. So looking at all of these together, it shows that it's vitally important in teenagers to try and get into a good sleeping routine and ensuring sufficient levels of high quality sleep. And as well as the health effects that we discussed previously, tiredness may also impact performance in school in teenagers. And this is because it can be more difficult to concentrate when tired. So it's not just the health effects that we looked at, the increased risk of obesity in children and teenagers, but also this could further impact their performance at school. So why is it that teenagers can be especially prone to not getting enough sleep? We talked a bit about it in terms of their body clocks, but also screen time can be a massive impact in teenagers. And that's because it can be especially high in teenagers, and this can interfere with sleep. This might be because teenagers are staying up late or even waking up in the middle of night to use social media, watch TV or play video or computer games. So one of the top tips for trying to improve a teenager's sleep is making their bedroom a screen-free zone. And one of the ways of doing this is to stop using screens an hour before bedtime or not having them in the room, and to charge phones in another room. This is something that I'm really bad with. I use my phone as my alarm, and many of the people listening might also do this. But then this adds a tendency to, if you're waking up and checking the time on your phone, it might either disrupt your sleep or it might influence your sleep if you're then staying up to reply to messages or to do something on your phone. It's not just screen time which can influence a teenager's sleep. Going to bed and waking up around the same time every day can also improve sleep. So trying to get into this good routine, good sleep routine. Getting into the daylight and exercising during the day can help improve sleep further, and avoiding caffeine later in the day. And we'll discuss a little bit more about the effects of caffeine and alcohol on sleep later on. So these things will help to try and keep a teenager's body clock regular and make it easier for teenagers to go to sleep and to wake up at a reasonable time. So what are the recommendations for adults? So most adults will need 7 to 9 hours of good quality sleep a night. We'll discuss the idea of good quality sleep in the next slide. However, as with most things, some people will need more and some people will need less. There'll be some level of individual variation in how much sleep different people need. So some people listening might think that they couldn't survive on 7 hours a night, and some people might think that sleeping for 9 hours a night would be far too long. But there's going to be some level of individual variation, and it's all about finding the right sleep routine for you. So if you're waking up and feeling refreshed in the morning, then it's likely that you've had sufficient duration and quality sleep. If you have difficulty falling asleep, then getting into this regular routine and relaxing to wind down and prepare to sleep can be a great way of improving your sleep. Later on, we'll discuss a few top tips for sleeping well and also for creating a sleep-friendly bedroom, which will hopefully be able to improve your sleep. And finally, on this page, a figure from the NHS that it's estimated that around 1/3 of adults have sleep problems. And often things like stress, computers, taking work home can be blamed for this bad sleep. But actually, it's more likely to be a variety of factors that's influencing this bad sleep. It could be things such as health conditions or simply just bad sleeping habits, which again, we'll discuss later on. So how about this idea of good quality sleep? So there's no national recommendations for sleep quality. However, here we've got a few top tips to try and look at your sleep quality. So it's important when you're talking about whether you're sleeping well and when you're meeting the challenge to sleep well, is to realize that it's not just about the duration of sleep, it's also about the quality of sleep. So some of the signs of good quality sleep can include falling asleep quickly, not waking up too many times in the night. And if you are waking up too many times in the night, making sure that you fall back to sleep quickly after waking up. And then also waking up feeling refreshed. This can be a great marker of whether you've had a good quality sleep and whether you've had a good night's sleep. And when looking at how to get good quality sleep, it's important to look at things like caffeine or alcohol or energy drinks. And it's important to not rely on caffeine and energy drinks as an example to try and give you a short-term energy or concentration boosts. And that's because these can disrupt your sleep, as can alcohol, which we'll talk a bit about later on. But if you're using these to try and make you feel awake in the short term or make you feel more alert in the short term, it wouldn't be advisable to rely on these. And that's really important to look at when looking at good quality sleep, because if you are relying on caffeine and alcohol, then these can disrupt your sleep patterns in the longer term. So if you're trying to keep yourself up with caffeine, or you've got an early meeting in the morning and you're using caffeine to make sure you're alert in this certainly wouldn't be advisable, as this can disrupt your sleep in the longer term. So how about people who aren't able to follow this regular sleeping pattern, or if they work during the night, and this can disrupt the circadian rhythms that we talked about earlier on. So night shift workers are an example of this, and they're at a particular risk of sleep disruption because they work during the normal rest phase. And as I said, this can disrupt their circadian rhythms. So this constitutes 12% of the UK workforce, and is putting night shift workers at an increased risk of reduced sleep duration and poorer sleep quality. And due to this high percentage of shift workers, the health implications of shift work through a lack of sleep and also other factors are likely to be substantial. And this reduced sleep duration and reduced sleep quality may partially explain why night shift workers have an increased risk of obesity. So what would be the recommendations for night shift workers? Well, it's important they try and follow the healthy eating guidelines, that they eat regularly, stay active, and avoid having alcohol and caffeine before sleep. And again, it's discussing the fact that we shouldn't be relying on caffeine to give us a short-term energy or concentration boost, as this can disrupt sleep. So this is an example of a BNF resource on healthy diet and lifestyle tips for shift workers. This gives some helpful tips on staying healthy as a shift worker. And when this presentation goes online, you'll be able to use these links to click through to them. So finally, we've established how much sleep we should be getting and how a lack of sleep can affect our health. But what are the top tips for sleeping well, and how can we improve our sleep duration and our sleep quality? Well, firstly, people often sleep better if they establish a regular routine for going to bed and waking up. And this is because keeping regular sleeping hours programs the brain and internal body clock to get used to a set routine, and then this can help us sleep. So this is one of the issues that we discussed in night shift workers that might not be able to fit into this routine. The second one here is to try and avoid caffeine, but also alcohol prior to bedtime, as these are well known to interfere with your sleeping patterns. One of the things with alcohol is some people think that this can be good for sleep. People might use alcohol to help them get to sleep, but actually, whilst alcohol can help you fall asleep, you tend to sleep less deeply if you've been drinking, and this means that you're more likely to be tired the next day. And the NHS alcohol recommendations are that men and women should not regularly drink more than 14 units of alcohol a week. So both caffeine and alcohol can interfere with your sleep. Another interference with sleep is smoking, which can have a negative effect on your sleep, as nicotine is a stimulant. And this means that smokers tend to take a longer time to fall asleep and wake up more frequently. And this can cause them to have more disrupted sleep. So alcohol, caffeine, and smoking can all have a negative impact on sleep. People also sleep better if they're physically active in the day, and also if they avoid large meals late at night, as this can disrupt sleep. It's also important to relax and wind down before bedtime. So this doesn't necessarily have to be yoga, as shown in the icon here, but there's many other ways to relax and wind down before bed. So this can include having a warm bath, warm relaxing bath, relaxation exercises or CDs, or reading a book before bed. So it's all about relaxing your mind. So practices like meditation can also help, just making sure that you're calm and relaxed and you don't have lots of thoughts and things rushing through your mind when you're trying to relax and go to sleep. So the final tip is something that we've discussed throughout this presentation, and it's to do with screen time. So it's important to try and turn off devices such as tablets, phones, TVs, and avoid playing video games at least an hour before bedtime, and to try and keep these devices out of the bedroom. And we discussed here about trying to either not have them in the bedroom, not using your phone as an alarm, and making sure that you're not checking your phone during the night. And that's because screen time can disrupt your circadian rhythms and it can disrupt sleep. So this is one of the ways that we can try and create a sleep-friendly bedroom. So the first tip here is to keep screens out of the room or not use an hour before sleep. But in order to create a sleep-friendly bedroom, it's also important to keep your room well ventilated and kept at a temperature of around 18 to 24 degrees. It's also important to try and make sure that your room is not noisy. And this might not be easy to do if there's a lot of outside noise, but if there is noise outside, it could be worth either investing in earplugs or just making sure that the windows are firmly shut to try and reduce the amount of noise that's getting in and disrupting your sleep. And finally, ideally, your bedroom should be dark, quiet, and tidy. Your bed should always be comfortable, and you should try and fit some thick curtains in to block out any daylight. So any outside lights that might interfere with your sleep, we should be trying to block those out. So thank you very much for listening. Just to sum up then, a regular lack of sleep can affect your health. So in the short term, lack of sleep can have a negative impact on your dietary choices, your mood and cognitive skills. It can also make you more vulnerable to colds and infections. In the longer term, these health effects of a regular lack of sleep are linked with the increased risk of serious health conditions. So example of obesity, we talked a bit about sleep and how it can impact body weight, but also an increased risk of heart disease, stroke, and hypertension in adults, and obesity in children and young people. Getting sufficient good quality sleep is a key element of a healthy lifestyle. And these are the recommendations. So most adults need between 7 and 9 hours of good quality sleep. We discussed how this might be slightly variable between individuals, but children and teenagers will generally need more sleep than this. And then we discussed a few top tips, various ways to improve your sleep quality and duration. Things like avoiding caffeine and alcohol late in the day, avoiding heavy meals late at night, trying to stick to regular times to go to bed and get up, getting in a good routine, making your bedroom sleep friendly, which will include making your bedroom screen free, and also try relaxing before sleep. And just a final point, that if you do have sleep problems and these are affecting your daily life, then it'd be advisable to see your GP and discuss sleep with him or her. So just a quick reminder of the challenge then. The challenge for the sleep well is get the sleep you need every night and get into a good bedroom time routine. And these are the example of the two super challenges that will be running during the day. And then I'll also bring attention to the sleep survey that we'll be running this year. So this is a nationwide survey which will be conducted during the week of the 13th of May. And this will include questions about your sleep and bedtime habits, and the duration and the quality of your sleep. It won't take too long to answer. I went through it the other day, didn't take particularly long, and it's quite interesting to sort of see what your answers are, and then you can look back at this webinar and see whether your routine was following the top tips that we've given, and all the questions that will be asked will be talking about your sleep on the previous night. So keep a lookout for your emails, and a link to the sleep survey will be coming out before then. And finally, just going over some of the sleep resources that we've already got online. So hopefully a lot of you have seen our Sleep Well poster. Just a note that hard copy posters are available for the next 1,000 registrants before the 11th of May. We've got this in English, and also online we've got our Welsh Sleep Well poster. And we've also got these challenge guides. So this is an example of the challenge guide for workplaces. There's also one for schools, and these are available on our website. So on our foodeffectivelife.org.uk website, but also our nutrition.org.uk website. We'll also have further resources that will be coming out nearer the week. So keep an eye on your emails, because information about these will be sent to your email, but you can also find them on our websites. And finally, just some other helpful resources. The two links at the top are to our foodeffectivelife.org.uk website, and a few of the resources that will be available for primary schools and for secondary schools. And then a link there just to more general resources and information about BNF Healthy Eating Week 2019. There's a few NHS resources here. If you wanted to read in any more detail about some of the things I've discussed today, these are some really useful and interesting resources. And there's a link there to the National Sleep Foundation, and also about an article on circadian rhythms if you want to read in a little bit more detail about that. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed the presentation. I hope you've learned something about sleep well. I hope you all get involved in the week and you enjoy this year's Healthy Eating Week. Remember to get involved on social media and let us know how you're completing the challenges. Thank you very much.